Let me pin you, beautiful ladies. All right, so we're starting off here today. Let me just pin us all so that we have all our pretty faces on the screen. Here we go. So today we have Liz Terry, Elizabeth Terry. We call you Liz, but my first
Perfectly
time
good.
meeting you, and you are a superstar. We thank you again, Natalie and I, for you went on a radio program before this and spoke all about menopause. And I can't wait to get into this call because as a mindfulness coach, this one goes deep for me. So I'm not going to go into the introduction too long. You are an NLP trainer and a positive intelligence coach, which I'm super excited to learn more about. And you have your own company called Limitless Transformation Coaching and Training Services. What I'll do is during the course of this program, I'll just pop it in the chat. And of
Yes.
course, in our replay email, I will put all of your contact information for anybody who wants to dive in. So welcome, Liz.
Thank
Lovely to
you.
have you.
Yes, thank you so much, Nikki and Natalie, for the invitation to be here. It's really a pleasure.
Oh, this is
Sure,
awesome.
thank you.
So let's get into it. What exactly is
Yeah.
NLP? What does it stand for? Let's just
All
dive straight in
right.
with that.
So let's sort of break it down. I generally call it toolkit for the mind. So it's how can you use your mind to get the kind of results that you want? Because most of us don't know the heck what our mind is doing, right? So the full NLP means neuro linguistic programming. So a mouthful. And I'll break that down for you. So neuro has to do with the mind and our neurology. So you would know that we experience the world largely. We're taught from the inside out. We have our five senses, we take in information, and we store it in a particular way, and that has impacts on us. So I'll talk a bit more about that. So it's our thinking, right? And then we have the linguistics, which is all about communication, how we communicate with other people, and very importantly, especially in this context, how we communicate with ourselves. And then finally, the programming. So programming, and we're all programmed. Whether we like to think of it or not, we are, and we are programmed from birth. Some would say even before birth. We develop a certain mindset, certain beliefs that we are not even conscious of. So they become deeply rooted in our unconscious mind. And these largely impact our behavior and how we interact with the world. So it's about understanding how those three spheres work and how we can use those more effectively, better strategies in our lives to enable us to live the lives that we really want, be more joyful, happier, feel more comfortable in our own skin.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah,
Very
so that's
cool.
that's a mouthful, but essentially that's what it's about. And Natalie here, Natalie can talk a little bit about that too. She was trained as an NLP practitioner as well. I hope you're
Didn't
still
know
Yeah,
that.
practicing some of it.
yeah. There's just so much, Nikki. I love learning.
I think it's awesome. Didn't know that until I heard it on the program. I think that's amazing. Fantastic.
Yes,
Yeah.
she
So
hides
I'll just sit and
it.
listen. I'll just sit and listen, and the two of you can talk about NLP and menopause.
So,
Yeah.
one of the things that really resonates for me when we're looking at NLP, neuro linguistic programming, and menopause is the words we use when we speak about ourselves. Because
Yes.
we've always heard it bantered about words have meaning, words are powerful, words are a double-edged sword, things like that. And neuro linguistic programming really brings that home because
Mhm.
when you when you look in the mirror and you go, "Ugh, I'm really getting fat. Oh, I'm really getting wrinkly. Oh, I don't know that. Oh, I don't." And you say these negative words. That's part of the programming that Liz is referring to, right?
Absolutely. Yep, yep.
Yeah.
And that's a self-talk. So how we talk to ourselves about ourselves is so critical to how we feel because our thinking mind affects our feelings. And depending on how we're feeling, that affects our behavior, and our behavior affects the results, either that result which we feel physiologically or we experience in the world. So it's so important. Thinking, feeling, our state of being internally, and then what we experience in the world. Yeah, what we're doing as a result of that.
Does that go on the reverse as well, Liz?
Well, we are impacted by the external world. In fact, that's how we're programmed. We're programmed that the world impacts us, the world affects us. But in NLP, we learn, and through other mechanisms, metaphysics and quantum physics and so forth, we've come to understand that in fact our perception is our projection. So what we perceive is actually, let me explain. So we get information from the outside world. 11 million bits per second of information is what is actually coming to us, right, through our senses. And at a conscious level, we can't actually take in all of that information. So we have various mechanisms that are automatic in us. And we describe these as the ability to delete information that for whatever reason doesn't resonate with us. That might be, okay, we decided we're not going to watch the news anymore. We're deleting information. It's not that it's not happening. We have made that determination, right? That we don't want to. And a lot of us are doing that too, right? So we delete information. We also distort information. We distort information based on our own meaning and our model of the world. So if we think things are supposed to go in a particular way, we often make it fit, right? And so we take that information and we make it fit. And then the third way is generalization. So we take one incident and we generalize it to kind of color all incidents or all people that look a particular way, and I guess that's perhaps the latter is the most well-known example. You're going through immigration. You look a particular way, you dress a particular way, you come from a particular country. Well, you are targeted, right? Because you have a profile. That's an example of generalization. So we have these mechanisms that sort of whittle the information down to a mere 126. Remember I said 11 billion bits per second. And of course that varies according to who you read, but the idea is that it's a whole heap of information and we are deleting, distorting, and generalizing down to maybe 126 bits per second. So that's a minute portion of everything that's out there. So it means that what we experience of reality is very subjective. Reality is subjective. So we create internally within ourselves, I call it it's a mind movie of what reality is. And that's made up of a visual, maybe something we tell ourselves, some sounds, colors, descriptions, whatever it is. And that becomes the meaning. In NLP, we call it our internal representation. And that internal representation impacts how we feel about our external reality. And then we project that back out onto the world. And our GPS is going to focus, so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy for us, essentially. We are projecting that back out into the world, and the more that we project it, the more we see it, and the more that we believe it, because it now cements. So it's like a feedback loop that we're developing for ourselves. So our minds are really powerful, but if we don't know how to use them, then we can create real problems for ourselves. And it's the same with our experience of menopause.
I was going to ask you about that because Natalie spoke about, when we see ourselves in the mirror and the words that we say. So let's dive into that. Is how can we navigate then or channel those bits of the information that are coming in to support us during menopause? How can we do that?
Okay. Well, I think the first thing is that we have to create a new story. And you ladies are actually helping to do that in your podcast, right? And helping people to reframe, because that's a big tool in NLP, helping people to reframe and create a new story. So we have been largely programmed to believe that menopause is this awful thing that happens to women when they get to middle age. Some earlier or some a bit later, but it doesn't matter. It's going to affect us. And it's somehow been given the meaning that we are losing our femininity. We're losing our sexuality. We're losing our desirableness, right? And we're losing our power as women. And that's the story that infects like a virus how we think of ourselves. So we need to create a new story about menopause, because menopause is really this period where we can access another level of our power, another level of our femininity, moving away from just sexual desirability to a powerhouse of consciousness, of being able to impact not only our lives but the lives of others, because now we have garnered all of this experience and we are now empowered. So, as I said earlier in the interview, suppose you were to look at even a symptom like hot flashes, which many people go, oh my God, I feel this and I feel just so debilitated by it. Suppose we were to reframe that and say, something to ourselves, like with every hot flash, what that is actually showing me the fire that I have within me, the energy that I have that is bursting forth, that I am now experiencing. And this is a great thing because I'm now getting into my full power. Wouldn't that be
Maybe
fantastic?
we can call them power surges instead of hot flashes.
Absolutely. That's right. Yeah.
Love that. Love that.
Yes. We have to reframe it in our minds, and it really does work. If you think of it as being something that is debilitating for you, that is embarrassing, that is whatever, then you are going to react. You're going to be telling yourself disempowering thoughts, and that is going to impact you. And there is, as you ladies know, there's this mind-body connection. So how we think affects the sort of neurotransmitters and hormones that are released in our system. So when we think a certain way, we're going to get anxious. And that is going to release all of the sort of negative, the cortisol and, those negative hormones that are going to start circulating. And then our heart starts to beat faster and we feel fatigued. And so it's like a cycle. So if we're beginning to tell ourselves this new story, this new metaphor that says really and truly, this experience, I'm going to embrace it. Because that's another thing. I think a lot of women are in resistance to it. So we want to push it away from us. We want to not just ignore it. We want to hold it at bay. But rather, if we can sort of think of it as embracing it, accepting it, and moving through it, then we begin to access more, as we say in positive intelligence, more ease and flow.
Oh, those are my 2 words for 2025, Liz. Ease and flow. So
really?
Ease and flow. Yeah.
my 2 words, ease and flow. So when we talk about it starts in the mind, and we know this, we can tell ourselves, we can say, we could change a story, but sometimes, as we know, that's a lot easier said than done. So let's give some practical. Is it something that you say to yourself in the mirror? Is it affirmations that you write? Is it changing who you follow on social media? What are some actionable items that, as a woman, think, okay, I need to change my story. How do I do that?
Okay. So one of the things that we teach is what we call a pattern interrupt. So every habit that we have, habit of thought, habit of, even getting up in the morning and doing something, those are unconscious patterns. So we have a conscious mind and we have an unconscious mind. And our conscious mind is probably, depending on who you read, worth about 3 to 7% in terms of its impact on our lives. It's a very important 3 to 7%, but there is this other aspect, the unconscious mind, which is kind of running the show, and we don't know much about it. And in the unconscious mind, this is where we have our programming and our imprinting and how we feel about certain situations and things. And our habits, like that you're driving a car. So when you were learning how to drive a car, you had to be very conscious, aware of every movement that you did. You know, you had to learn how, especially if you learned on a stick shift car, right? You had to learn how to put the car in gear, you know, release the clutch slowly, press on the gas. I mean, a number of different things that you had to learn how to do. And at first it was conscious. Over time, you began to do it automatically, so much so that, you know, we're putting on our lipstick, you know, we're drinking our coffee. And sometimes we reach home and we don't even know that we've got, you know, how the heck did I get here? Because our unconscious mind has taken control. And so this is what has been happening with our programmed responses to certain situations. They have become habitual, and we're not even aware of it. So the first thing that we have to do is that we have to develop our self-awareness, because we can't change what we don't know, right? So we have to become aware of, what am I really saying to myself here? What am I feeling? So maybe when, you know, a hot flash comes on, or maybe when we get up in the morning and we feel fatigued and we look in the mirror and we see the bags and the sags and the, you know, the wrinkles, then, you know, what is it that I'm actually saying to myself?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when we recognize that, we're becoming more self-aware. And this is the first step in emotional intelligence, and indeed positive intelligence, which is the other aspect of what I teach. So we have to become aware. So let's say we become aware and we realize that we have this pattern, we have this reaction to a certain thing. And so as soon as we begin to feel that maybe feeling, whether that's a hot flash coming on, or whether it is just the self-talk that we're saying to ourselves, we have to be able to interrupt it. Because rather like an avalanche, you know, we have to build a wall to stop it. We can't do it when it's halfway down the mountainside, because it's not going to stop, right? So we have to stop it very early on. So we catch ourselves. No. We can try self-talk. No, actually, that's not what I'm going to say to myself. I'm going to say something in terms of, let's say I look in the mirror and I say myself, and I say, oh God, look at those wrinkles. I feel so fat, or whatever it is, right? And you can catch yourself saying it and say, no, actually, I want to say something different. Stop. We can stop our minds. We can say, no, stop. Thank you very much for reminding me that this is how I'm feeling. But actually, I love my wrinkles, because I'm seeing myself now as a more mature woman, as someone who is bringing all of my experiences into my present. And I'm learning every day to love myself more. So, and I like to use that word, I'm learning to do more. The reason I like it is that often there's a big gap between what we have been saying to ourselves and what our desired state is. It's like a huge thing. So if we say, oh, I just absolutely love it, we're not actually resonating with it at a deeper level. Because remember, we're also vibrational beings.
Mm-hmm.
And when we are faking it till we make it, we're actually not necessarily changing our vibrational signature, because we're actually not resonating with it. We're saying it, but we're not feeling it. So we have to be able to connect with the feeling of it. So when I say, for example, now, I'm learning every day more and more to love my wrinkles, to love where I am in life, and to embrace it. I can probably resonate more deeply with that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm taking
it feels more authentic.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
And so I'm taking incremental steps towards where I want to go. And I'm saying, yes, it's like I'm moving up the ladder of vibration. I'm taking myself from where I am now, and I am taking these baby steps up. So every day, yeah, I know I don't look like when I was 30, but I'm learning to love who I am now. Every
Love
day,
that.
more and more, right? So these
Can I
are
tell
just
you
baby
that
steps.
feels so much better
Mhm.
Yeah,
because otherwise it feels fake.
Mhm.
yeah, yes.
I can't look in the mirror and say, I like the way that my neck is looking these days. I can't say it because it doesn't resonate
You
authentically
don't feel
inside
it.
me.
You don't feel it is what
No.
Liz is saying. You don't feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So saying that
So
I'm learning to do it.
I'm learning.
Yeah.
I'm learning, and every day I'm getting better at it.
Mhm.
And so you're starting to change that programming, right?
I
And you're
love that.
beginning to raise your vibration a bit higher. So that would be an example of a pattern interrupt, to come back to
Okay.
NLP.
Mm.
We can also interrupt. Let's say we're having a hot flash and we're feeling this, maybe a level of anxiety about it. We can do what I call a PQ rep. And a positive intelligence is, we've heard of IQ, right? And that's really about measuring your intellectual quotient. And they've heard of EQ, or emotional quotient. And PQ is about our positive intelligence quotient. And
Mm.
I like to think of it as encapsulating all of the emotional intelligences. So there are about 17 or 18 different emotional intelligence competencies that we learn as we grow through being more and more emotionally intelligent. And the PQ programming teaches you how to reprogram, right, from being sabotaged by the the self-talk, the judgments that we have in our minds about ourselves, about situations, about other people, and we're constantly judging, right? Even if we're not aware of it. It teaches us how to interrupt those patterns, how to gain more self-command so that we can move from our saboteur tendencies and thinking into accessing more of our sage or inner sage. And I think this is so appropriate for women, to recognize that we all do have that inner sage. So I gave you the idea of, the hot flash actually having a different meaning. So as it's coming on, doing a positive intelligence rep, and I can give you an example of that in a minute so that you can, experience what that's like. It's like mindfulness. Nikki, you're saying you're a mindfulness coach. And it's like a quick mindfulness exercise that helps to distract our mind from the thoughts that are sabotaging us into our feelings. And you might say, well, I don't know if I want to really feel this sensation. But when we begin to feel the sensation fully and to associate it with a different meaning, then we can begin to feel differently about it. So the PQ rep done early on in the day can help us to embrace it and to feel it and to allow us to move from, this sensation of debilitation and sweating and embarrassment and whatever into a feeling of maybe, yes, this is something that is actually heightening my power, my internal power. And perhaps at that same time, to use an NLP type of reference, we use a methodology called collapse anchors. And collapse anchors is a way of moving away from a feeling that is undesirable. In this case, a feeling of, the hot flash and all of that goes with it, physically and mentally, to another experience. So let's say you have an experience of, the hot flash, and there's this heat that's rising up in you. And you would love to feel a different feeling, which is a cool bath, let's say. You want to feel that feeling of coolness, of being in a cold bath. The collapse anchors technique can help you to move from that heat into the cool. And I know it sounds really weird, but trust me, it does work. And it works because we have the inability to multitask. Many of us think we can do multitasking very well, but we really don't. The mind and the body is not able to feel two different things at the same time, right? So when you connect neurologically, and if you've heard of the Pavlov theory with the dogs, right? So the dogs were salivating when they got the food, and the anchor of the food was replaced by the sound of the bell. And so when the dogs heard the bell, they salivated. So what happened internally was that there was a neurological connection between the bell, first of all, the food, but then the bell and the food and the salivation. And this is how our programming works, it triggers and it runs a circuit. So we're feeling that heat and we connect an anchor, let's say an anchor on your finger. So we connect an anchor there that says, okay, this is how you're feeling at this moment. But we connect a very positive anchor, a feeling of delight, of coolness, of managing ourselves, of being in control, of being confident, all at that same time. And we anchor that feeling on a different knuckle. And then we actually set both of them off at the same time. And it's a very peculiar feeling. I mean, Natalie had this experience. You sort of feel a little discombobulated because your body can't feel both at the same time effectively. So it kind of scrambles what's going on internally. And then you release the negative anchor and hold down the positive one for a longer period until there's a sort of settling off. And what happens is that it collapses that very negative anchor that you have, this programming, about the actual hot flash and the feeling associated with it and the sensation. And it begins to bring to mind now, when you have that feeling, there's this sense of confidence. There's this sense of coolness, of embrace, of calm, whatever it is that the person wants to feel. So that's a technique. I don't advise you try it on your own, but certainly you can come to me. The PQ rep is a very quick mindfulness technique that can interrupt that sensation and the pattern. And so I'll just take you through one of those techniques. So I just ask you to sit very straight and tall in your chair. And make sure your back is against the back of the chair and your feet on the floor. And in the moment, I'm just going to ask you to close your eyes simply because it helps to shut out. In all instances, you may not be able to do this. If you're by yourself, then perhaps you can. And just take a deep centering breath, one in and out. And as you sit there, I just want you to become super aware of the weight of your body on the chair. Just feel those touch points where your body is touching the chair, your thighs, your buttocks. Just feel the weight of it. And just go right down to your feet on the floor. And just see if you can find all 10 of your beautiful little toes. See if you can find them all separately. All 10 of them. And then bring your thumb and your forefinger together with such acute attention that you can feel every ridge on your two fingers, every single ridge. And bring both hands together and do that with all 10 of your fingers. And then rub your hands together. And as you do that, rubbing your hands up and down, just Feel your palms, feel the temperature of your hands as you do that. And notice if your palms are damp or cool. Now turn your attention to your listening and just see if you can hear the furthest away noise. Could be a car, could be something in your garden. And then something closer. Maybe the noise of a fan or the hum of your computer. And bring your attention now to your breath. And as you breathe in, just notice the temperature of the air as it passes through your nostrils. And the temperature as you exhale. When you're quite ready, just bring yourself back into the room. You can open your eyes.
Do I have to?
So how do you, yeah,
I know.
How-
Can I stay there?
how does that feel?
Fantastic. Yeah.
Really?
Just
Yeah.
feel like
Relaxed.
just come down.
Very relaxed. You sort of
just
decompress.
decompress.
Yes. So it takes you out of your mind. It interrupts a pattern, the thinking that you had about a particular symptom maybe that you're having. And it helps you to get into a space where you can now access what we call the sage part of your brain. Because when you are in saboteur mode, you are in survival mode. You are in fear mode. And it said, we really have two distinct emotions, fear and love. And when you are in survival mode, you are in fear mode. There is anxiety, there's overwhelm. And so what you want to be able to do is to shift into your thriving mode, right? And to be able to open up your mind to different possibilities. When you're in survival mode, it's impossible to think creatively. It's impossible to be imaginative. It's impossible to, feel the kind of feelings that you want. You can't just make that, leap over to the other side. So again, it's about moving you gently into another space so that you can access that, self-love, that self-empathy, for example, which is so important in menopause because a lot of times women begin to self-hate. I hate what I'm going through. Just the very words that are used are really indicative of not accepting. I hate this, I hate that. No, we want to activate that self-love aspect of our brain, that self-empathy that says, I really love and appreciate myself just for exactly where I am and what I'm going through. It's
Well,
okay.
I think the learning to love part that you told us earlier really will help that because for some women it is hard to go from this constant barrage that we do to ourselves to all of a sudden loving ourselves. But I think having that transitional stage of let me just learn to love the wrinkles first. Then maybe I learn to love my midsection that's a little bit bigger. Maybe it's I learn to love, you know what I mean? And being
Exactly.
able to do each part because this is not an overnight process. We know this because, as you
Yes.
said, we've been programmed
Yes.
from
Yeah.
we're born deep
Deeply ingrained.
Exactly. So this is not something that's going to change. Oh, I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and I'll be like, oh, feeling great,
Yeah.
you know. But it's that learning to love. But you said something in the radio program before this, and I'd love you to tell this story about your journey through menopause. And when you talked
Sure.
about that, that spoke to me about you weren't in fear of it. So I would
Yes.
love you to share a little bit about that, your journey of
Sure.
menopause.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, uh, I I guess I started to have symptoms probably in my mid 50s. At least that's when I became aware of them. I've always been somewhat with irregular menstrual cycles most of my life. So I was never quite sure, at what stage I was at, even when I was pregnant. Was I pregnant? Wasn't I? Those kind of things. But around, 52, 53, 54, I began to kind of feel certain symptoms coming on, and more irregular periods. I began to feel a little tired, and every now and again having some hot flashes and feelings. And I had never really been programmed to sort of think about menopause in a negative way. My mother didn't talk much about it. I think she had quite a few symptoms, but she never spoke about it. And I was never aware of the fact that she was going through difficulty. So I didn't have that aspect of it. And so as it started to come on, and I went to the doctor, and she says, "Oh, you're perimenopausal probably, and look out for these things." And she says, "Well, if you want hormonal treatment and so forth, we can arrange that." And I said, "No, I'm a very natural kind of girl." And I remember segueing into puberty, and I began just telling myself, well, I went into puberty. I didn't have any fear of it. I just realized it was part of the process. Many people had gone through it before me, and many people will after. And it's just something that, is normal. I normalized it in my mind. And so I did the same thing with menopause. I just said, well, it's part of the circle of life, and I'm just going to take it as it comes. And as it got more intense, I think one of the things I noticed was a fatigue, doing the level of activity and the things that I wanted to before. I found myself struggling in some of those instances, or sort of confusion and feeling like I didn't have my mind on straight, brain fog, things like that. And I just learned to embrace it and to say to myself things like, oh, okay, so maybe I need a little bit more sleep. Yeah. So, I mean, it's very much a mind-body thing, and you ladies would be very familiar and tout that as well. We have to learn that our bodies do what our bodies do, but we are more than our bodies. So learning to dissociate from it and to recognize that the body is not me. It's part of me while I'm here in this 3D reality. And it enables me to do what I need to do. So I need to take care of it. But it's not the wholeness of me. And so learning to dissociate from it. And I think that's one of the things that I did as well, to just sort of, I didn't have that programming. I accepted it. I embraced it. Yep. And to be honest, after a while, the hot flashes diminished. I didn't feel them as deeply. I kind of just, went with it. Yeah, I took my fan. And even now, sometimes they come and go. But I don't resist it. I just embrace it. And I just say, this is just one of those things. It's change. It's taking me to a new phase of my life. Very important.
I love that because you did it all through the mind. And this is why we do what we do, is that there's so much power in there. It can work for us and it can work against us. And we are in control of making that change, making that distinction. We really are.
We are completely. And sometimes it's boy, I can't do that. There's something I can't do it. And we just think, well, this is who I am, but it's not true. We're actually very changeable, and we're changeable, thank God, because we have our mind, and we have not only our brain, but we have our consciousness.
Yes.
And so that can impact us in so many levels, spiritually, through techniques such as this, which and NLP and positive intelligence and others that help us to clear away, I like to say, clear away some of the debris, some of the stuff that we get hooked up on, and keeps us trapped into this belief that we are our bodies, or we are what we are experiencing. But when we become an observer to our experiences, then it helps us to step back and to not sort of latch onto it and take it so personally. Yeah.
Being an observer, I love that. That was something we trained. Yes, Nance, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. So, Liz, when we're talking about the pattern interrupt, right? Something that my clients, well, two things, that we tend to use substances to self-soothe, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So some people self-soothe with food. So I'm stressed, I'm
Mm-hmm.
bored, I'm anxious, I'm tired, I eat. Now
That's
that
right.
then just physiologically, that then leads to weight gain. And women
Mm-hmm.
at this time of life, we're
Yes.
already challenged with weight gain. Then it makes us feel worse about ourselves. And then we go, why
Yes.
bother? And then we eat more and we're in that
Yep.
cycle. So
Yep.
that's one potentially vicious cycle. Another potentially vicious cycle is I'm anxious, I'm not sleeping, I'm stressed out, I'm irritable, let me have a drink, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we know that physiologically, alcohol has certain changes in our body that also make us gain more weight, also make us bloated and puffy, also raises our cortisol, which makes the whole anxiety and depression and stress worse. So, with
Yes.
alcohol, you feel better initially, but
Mm-hmm.
the longer term effect on the body is to make the very feeling that you're trying to run away from worse, right?
That's right.
So, either one of those two situations, how would you advise a woman to use a pattern interrupt to help change one of these self defeating behaviors?
Okay. So first of all, we have to figure out what's the behavior. Well, first of all, why are you doing it? Why
Mm-hmm.
are you doing the behavior? Because you have to kind of mine the reason behind it, because sometimes we are just mindless in doing what we're doing, right? So there is always a benefit that we are getting from the substance or the
Mm-hmm.
activity, whether that's drugs or alcohol or cigarette smoking or sex or whatever it is, the habit that we want to get rid of. There is some need at an unconscious level that we have that we want to eliminate, or should I say, we want to soothe, use your word. So when we figure that out, then what we want to do is to figure out another way, another positive way that we can answer that need, that we can get that feeling of soothing and of comfort that we are getting in a negative way currently. So in the instance of, okay, so I feel this way and I'm going to reach for that comfort food that I know is going to put on weight, right? So it's a feeling, and for women, so a different woman, it may be a little bit different. What is it that they're actually feeding? What am I feeding? Is it a need to feel better about myself? Is that the need? Is it that I want attention? Because sometimes people eat because they seeking attention, maybe from their husband or from some other external party that they're not getting. And so the eating is a distraction to that. Maybe it's the comfort, maybe it's the security. So when we figure out what that is, then we can help you design a strategy, an activity, an action that you can take that will replace, because again, it comes back to authenticity. We have to speak to the individual and what it is that is driving them to do it. So they figure out, well, okay, in this case, what I really want is this to feel better about myself. And that's what's making me eat. So is there some other way, and this is all led by the client, right? Is there some other way that you can begin to feed that need to feel better about yourself in a more positive way? Something, and it has to be something that brings them a certain enjoyment. Because if it is something that they don't want to do, then, we have to reframe that too. So if it's going for a walk in nature, let's say. It may not always be possible to do that at the moment, but maybe there is something else that I can do. Maybe there is some breath work that I enjoy. I can put a pause in there and I can begin to deep breathe. I can do maybe 4, 7, 8 pattern of breathing to distract my mind. Maybe I can pick up a book. Maybe I can begin journaling when I have this urge so that I become more aware of what's going through my mind and I can take hold of myself, right? Because what a lot of people forget is that they have a choice. They actually do have a choice. And just the action of pausing and looking at yourself and what you're doing is, in effect, a pattern interrupt. You are putting a pause button on the action that you were doing almost unconsciously. And so even questioning, am I really hungry? What am I really doing here? What's driving me to do this? Even that action is bringing your attention to what you're doing and causing an interrupt. So by doing that, we begin to say, okay, so what would I like to do differently? And we begin to ask ourselves that question and finding something to replace that behavior. We always want a replacement behavior. After we've interrupted, then what is that replacement behavior that would work for the client? It's always driven by what will work for the client so that they become accustomed to it. Yeah. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it
Very
is.
helpful.
And also, if you think about it, Natalie, I mean, it has to resonate with the person. So if you say, well, am I hungry? No, I'm not hungry. Okay, well, I'm going to put on my sneakers and go for a walk or go for a run. Now, for some women, they don't like to do that. Exercise is not their thing. So it's
Right.
really important for you to go in and see what that is for you. So
Right.
is it journaling? Is it walking? Is it taking a hot bath? Is it petting the dog? Just go in and see what, because as you said, Liz, it's not going to, there's no link. You
Yeah.
can't link it. You can
Yes.
stop, but if there's nothing to link it to, you're just gonna
That's it.
go right
Revert.
back.
Revert to the old behavior.
Yeah.
And so after a while, when you do this enough times, that interrupt becomes part of the pattern, the new pattern. So you then begin to say, oh, okay, so immediately, am I really hungry? Do I really, really want to do this? What am I feeding here? What am I really feeding? It's not my stomach. Yeah. And so every time it happens, you begin to ask yourself that question, and that leads you to the activity or the action or the behavior that you have decided to take instead. And it becomes easier and easier over time. So visualization is also a very important thing. When you begin to rehearse mentally what your action is going to be, your new behavior, then that becomes also a trigger for you. So when you begin to see yourself, okay, no, I'm not going to the fridge, this is what I'm going to do, and you rehearse it over and over again, and you get the client to rehearse it. And then you begin to say, okay, yeah, I feel good about doing that instead. Yeah. But it's practice. I've had clients say to me, Liz, can't you just wave a magic wand? And I say, well, actually, no. Yeah.
It's a muscle. You have to train it.
Yes.
It's a muscle. You have to do the reps and train it.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Yeah. I mean, we have a few little tricks that we can do as NLP coaches to help you sort of replace things very quickly. But I think for a longer term sort of intervention, it's good for you to recognize the patterns are built by strategies. And the more that you actually connect those neurons together, neurons that wire together, fire together. And over time, that becomes now your strong response to a situation rather than that old behavior that you have.
Definitely. Love that. Can you tell us what positive intelligence coaching exactly is and what does that entail? Because I'm super excited by this.
Okay. So positive intelligence is helping your mind to move from sabotaging thinking to sage thinking. because that is all going to help you in getting the kinds of results. So it's a slightly different methodology. They work well together, and I often do my coaching with both. And the Positive Intelligence Program is a program that I licensed to offer. And it comes with an app, which helps you to build that new neural circuitry to take you away from your sabotaging thoughts into your sage. So it starts with an assessment that you do that helps you to identify, because remember, we can't change what we're not aware of, right? So we start with an assessment that helps you to identify the key ways of thinking that sabotage you. So we have a whole host of them. Everyone has the master judge. We all have the judge that is judging continuously ourselves, other people, and situations. So we call that the master judge. And the master judge works with a number of accomplices. And these accomplices are 9. So they range from tendencies of control, for example, the controller, to the avoider. The avoider, of course, is the one that doesn't want to deal with situations frontally. That tends to circumvent them. And that has its own issues. Or the controller that micromanages and wants to control everything. The hyper-rational that is totally in the logical mind and disconnected from the heart, which causes a lot of problems in relationships, for example. Or you may have the pleaser. A lot of women may fall into this category, that we are nurturers, and so we put ourselves last. Or we are so invested in pleasing others that we attach our self-worth to it. And so we are constantly over-pleasing, and that brings about a certain level of sometimes resentment.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're not getting back what we expect, but the people that we're pleasing don't know that we expect it. And so it's a vicious cycle. And so there are 9 of them, 9 different ways that we tend to do this to ourselves. And it's recognizing those patterns and the strengths of those patterns, because they are born out of our own personal strengths. But here's the but. We overuse them to help us in situations that are challenging. So we fall on our strengths, we overuse them, and then they become problematic. So that's one side of the equation. Then there is the sage. And the sage side of our minds is really helping us to, first of all, access our sage perspective. So the sage perspective is that everything that comes to us can be seen as a gift and an opportunity. Everything. We may not be able to do it immediately, but we can learn how to see things from that perspective. And then there are 5 sage qualities, which we learn how to access. The first is empathy. That incorporates a number of emotional intelligence competencies, such as, self-empathy, love, appreciation, gratitude, thankfulness. All of those are incorporated in that one word. The second one is explorer. And this is developing the curiosity. Often as children, this is how children learn, they learn through being curious. And as we grow in adulthood, we tend to lose that curiosity. We have sayings that limit us, like curiosity killed the cat, or you're too fast. So we're not talking about those kind of maybe negative fastness, but curiosity that drives us to explore and to find meaning, to appreciate others' perspectives, to really be like the archaeologist digging. And then we have, navigation. How do we? The next one usually in the lineup is really about, navigating. How do we navigate life? How do we go through being always aligned with our values, ensuring that we make choices that are resonant with us in being authentic? And how do we be innovative? How can we be innovative? Because innovation is very closely aligned to curiosity, but it's a little different. It's using the powers of imagination. And a lot of these, as you will hear me going through it, are really born in the childlike aspect of us that we tend to forget. And then finally, it's activate, because often we think of those aspects of ourselves as being passive, but in truth, it's not so. We want to be able to take action that is born out of using all those previous qualities, so that our action is devoid of the saboteur thinking. We eliminate that. And we are taking action that is laser focused, that is going to help us to really be unencumbered, that is insightful, that taps into our intuition. So
Wow.
the program is, the basic program is over 6 weeks. As I said, it comes with an app. It helps us to develop our muscles of self-command, of being able to interrupt our saboteurs and being able to access our sage. And there is a sort of gym and focus challenges that take us through the program, along with a video that is released every week. The program is developed by Shirzad Shameen, who is a psychologist and an author. And I have found, with my clients, I mean, I have countless testimonials of people who've gone through the program, and they're telling me, how much it has changed their lives. So it can be very, very powerful. And I twin that with my own weekly in-person coaching that I do over 8 weeks. So the basic program is 8 weeks. I have a program which I'm starting at the end of January, which is actually for leaders. And I consider all of us leaders. We are self-leaders, first of all, or we're leaders of our business or organizations, or teams or families. And that's a 12-week program. And it comes with the basic program as well as the additional coaching and a workshop at the end to help solidify all of the learning. So
This is
I hope that's
amazing.
helpful.
Oh my God, I just love all of this. I think this is
Mhm.
amazing. I mean, the fact that we have these tools for not only menopause, because that's what we talk about, but life in general. I mean, life is happening, as
Yes,
you and I talked about at the start of the show.
yes,
2025, lots of things are happening. Having this toolkit for us is what is going to get us through this journey. And as you said, thriving, going from this survival mode to a thriving mode, which I think is, I'm just so fascinated by all of this. I think this is
come and join
amazing.
me.
Yes. Well, I want you to talk a little bit about,
Sounds
because it
great,
tells
right?
off now. You have a workshop coming up, which I'm going to drop the link in for everybody
Hmm.
watching. I'm going to drop that into the
Yes,
email.
yeah.
But quickly, your free workshop, it's a free workshop, right?
Yes, it is. It is indeed. And it's called Vision to Reality. And it's exploring how you can use some of the fundamentals and principles of NLP to take your pipe dream into manifesting as your reality.
Wow. I'm
Yeah.
excited. Oh, I'm
So it's
excited.
a 2-hour workshop. It's actually a repeat. I did it last week, and some persons who wanted it, they weren't able to make it. So I said, okay, I'll do it again. And so that's happening on January 22nd in the evening, 6:30 to 8:30. So people should be home by then and able to access. And it's live. All you have to do is to register at that link, and perfectly free. Just come and gain the
Love
knowledge
it.
and apply it to your lives.
Love it. Love it. I definitely will be sharing in my groups, and I know Nat will probably will do the
Yes.
same, sharing with it.
Wonderful.
Women supporting
Wonderful.
women. Absolutely.
Yes. Yes, I love it.
Awesome. Nat, you have any final words before we let Liz go? This has been an amazing
No,
session.
so powerful. I learned so much. Just reminders as well to reframe the words we use that I'm learning. Like there's so many good takeaways.
Definitely.
Pattern
Yes.
interrupts. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Liz. And I will send out, you'll give me your contact info. Just drop it in our chat. Just all of your
Sure,
contact information so I can
I
just plug
will.
that into the email when I send out
Absolutely.
the Awesome.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure. And I hope your listeners will have gained some tools, some knowledge that will help them in managing menopause in a more productive way.
Without a
Thank you
doubt.
very much.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you
and
very
have a
Yes.
much.
wonderful rest of Monday.
Yes. Thank you
Mm,
very much,
mhm.
All right,
ladies. You
ladies.
too. Bye
Bye.
Bye.
bye.